Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Sandra and I talk all things books and writing on this channel. So last month I decided to read a bunch of romance books, summer romance books that are actually very popular that I've just never read yet. And yeah, I decided to just read romance for a month. And here are the books. I'm going to go quickly through the books and then I'm going to share my opinions on them as I've read them. Obviously these are going to be older clips and then at the end I'm just going to wrap up. So first book that we have here is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Then we have One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. Then we have It Ends With Us and It Starts With Us by Miss Colleen Hoover. Then we have Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And finally we have 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. And I think this is a total of 6 books, I believe. Yes, 6 books. 6 popular romance summer books that everyone has read except me. Everyone on BookTok, BookTube, everywhere have read these books, raved about them. Some people hated them, some people loved them. So I basically read them and tell you what I think about them unfiltered. And I don't think there are many spoilers, and if there are spoilers, I usually warn you beforehand. So I think I only go into spoilers with this book because it's a sequel. So yeah, that's about it. I'm going to be rolling the clips soon, so I hope you enjoy this video and we'll talk at the end. So the first summer romance book that I read is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So this is, I think, the third Taylor Jenkins Reid book that I'm reading, and honestly, I really did enjoy it. At first, I wasn't too sure about it. I wasn't really vibing with the writing style, the characters, but it gradually got me hooked, especially with the storyline that happened in the past that, you know, explains how we come to this situation, how we come so far into the lives of these 4 siblings, and it's the Riva family. And I do think it's a great summer read. However, I wouldn't market this as a romance because of how messed up the relationships are. It's more about family and family relations. Of course, there's some like romance. All the siblings have like this kind of romantic entanglement with someone, especially the main character Nina. She is married to this famous tennis player, but it's not about that. It's about more or less how your upbringing affects the way that you're going to be in relationships, affects the way that you're going to see yourself, see the world, and what you're going to allow in your life, essentially, unless you decide to take a different path, unless you decide to actually change the history, you know, like unless you try to like basically counter generational trauma. So this one, out of all of her books, I would not classify as a romance, but I do think it's a really good book. I do think that it reads very compellingly. It is very much in the heat of romance. It's set in Malibu, and yeah, I just did enjoy it, but I think I read it so quickly as well that like, I don't know, there was missing something more to the overall present storyline. I did like the ending. I did feel very connected towards the end, and I did like actually see myself in some ways when it comes to like that strain in the family, when it comes to like understanding what does it mean to be a family, what does it mean to be an actual active family member versus what does it mean to be a family member that always drops in and out of your life, right? But essentially the past storyline, we do see more of the romantic connections and whatnot. So I don't know, I liked it. I don't find it like crazy good, and I don't find it horrible either. There are aspects of it that I really loved and I could really relate to, and it really felt poignant, and there are other aspects where I was like, this is like too long, let's get to the point, essentially. So I wouldn't categorize this as a romance. I don't know why it's been categorized online where I was checking as a romance, as a summer romance. That's why I picked it up mainly. But I was pleasantly surprised given that it wasn't a romance. But the other books that I've picked up for this vlog have been romances. So we'll get to them in the next few clips. Let's just pretend I'm filming this on a different day because I just did a poor job at filming, okay? I did a poor job at filming these. I just kept reading without filming or vlogging because I didn't want to vlog for my regular vlog because I wanted to keep this separate, but at the same time then I would forget to like actually film like my responses and reactions, but at the same time I don't want to spoil anything. So yeah, I did a poor job. So the next reading vlogs, I'm going to actually go into more like in depth, more spoilers maybe even, and just like film more like of me reading. What do you guys prefer? I feel like there are some vloggers that vlog like intermittently, like where they film themselves reading the books, sharing some impression, and then coming back with a big wrap up, and that feels more like my regular vlogs. Or like I see some where they just sit down every time they finish the book of like a certain kind of thematic that they're filming, and just in one take talk about their thoughts and impression, either with spoilers or without. So let me know which version you prefer, if you like a bit of both, if you don't really mind, it just, you know, as long as you're hearing about the books and my thoughts. I don't know, let me know. Spoilers, no spoilers, spoilers and no spoilers. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I personally watch a little bit of everything too, so like for me it doesn't really matter. Obviously I never want to watch spoilers if I haven't read something, but I like that most people like they will say, okay, there's a spoiler ahead, so we'll skip ahead, whatever. I don't know. Let me know. But the next book that I read was 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. I'm gonna say this off the bat, I think this is one of my favorite books of the year. I think this is the favorite one of this video, okay, because it was just so good. You know the type of book that is so good that you actually need to take your time reading it because you don't want it to end. I kid you not, I could have read this in one sitting, but I would purposely read it on my phone, okay? I wouldn't even read the hard copy. I would read it on my phone every night for like 2 weeks. I would read like a chapter or two because I was just enjoying it so much, and I actually want to reread it already, so maybe next summer I'm going to reread it. But okay, let's talk a little bit about the story and why I loved it so much. Before getting to the story, I just want to say, major trigger warning. I would definitely look them up before reading this because for me, as someone who suffered from both of the trigger warnings from the separate couples, I found it a bit triggering, but that's just because like I've been recovering in the last year or so, so it was hard, but at the same time that's what made me so connected to it, because I was like, these two main characters, well, there's the one main character, the female lead, and Shane, the male lead, is kind of like not really a main character, but he's always there, so like I guess he's kind of like a main character. But both of their stories, I related to both of their stories so much, and the thing that they're struggling with, which is a trigger warning, I don't know if it's a spoiler, so I won't say what they're struggling with, but we follow Shane and Ava, and Shane and Ava had like 7 days in June when they were in high school, and they were intense, they were reckless, they both were dealing with their own separate addictions, and when they meet, it's just like this moment in time where for once they both feel seen, they both feel loved, they both feel understood, they don't judge each other, they understand, although they like their heart breaks for the other person for them to be going through what they're going through with their addiction. So they kind of like meet and they go on a bender together, and they just like spend all that time together. It's hot, it's heavy, it's steamy, it's like young adult, and like, you know, like you're really reckless and you're reckless with your heart too, and they both seem to open up for the first time in their lives with a separate person, and they connect really well. They love the same books. Like Shane was reading James Baldwin when she met him on the bleachers, and yeah, it's just like you want to know what's happening and what happened, how come they've been apart for so many years, like almost like a decade and a half before they reconnect. So now the most interesting part about the story is that I'm gonna let this down because like my shoulder's hurting now, but the most interesting part about the story is that they're both authors, and they both kind of made it, like they're like really well known. They're both known, but Shane has like wide success versus Ava that has a more smaller, modest success because she writes her main black characters in this like vampire series where, you know, like always like with women in women literature, we see them like lesser than because of the nature of what we write. So Not only that, she's also a black woman writer, and she started off really young. So she does have fame, she does have recognition, and her agent, Cece, is like one of her best friends, but Cece also represents Shane. And actually, they don't know that they're represented by the same person, and Cece never knew that they had a wild romance when they were younger, and then something happened and they've been apart for all this time, right? So it just happens by mistake that they end up at the same writing conference, and from there they reconnect. Things are crazy, as in like crazy emotional, really hard hitting. We just see how these two people have been writing to each other all these years without like anyone cluing in and anyone understanding, because like they write these really real feeling characters, but it's because it's based on the other person that they've known when they were younger. And so you see that banter, and you see them like criticizing each other because they've both written about the other person, and they've both been secretly reading what the other person has been putting out, right? So Shane writes like these literary books, and Ava writes, like I said, vampire books, and they're both black, so obviously their main characters is black. The other thing that comes into play in this book is race and the celebration, but also still the hardship of black voices, especially when you're a woman. And for that, I think that this book is really, really important. Already that you have everything, like the characters are so fleshed out, they're so complex, they're so interesting, they're so relatable. But on top of that, it's like we don't see black main characters that are writers falling in love and having success, and you know what I mean? Like, I find like this book is really important, and I'm so glad that a lot of people have raved about this when it first came out, and I'm pretty sure that other people are still reading this book. So oh my god, I'm so obsessed with it. And then Ava also has a daughter, and she is the most Gen Z relatable, funniest, smartest girl ever, and it's just such a treat to read her. We also have chronic pain representation because Ava has chronic pain. Like, there's just so much to unpack, and it's such a compelling, interesting, fascinating, well-developed read that, like, I don't know, I was laughing, I was horny, I was crying, I was like triggered, like all of the above. Like, I really wish I would have filmed like an in-depth reading vlog where I would like tell you guys like my highlights and like what do I think. Maybe I'll do that next year, because I need a break from books like these, because wow, like it was like the author came into my brain or saw a vision of me, and like I felt so connected. Anyways, I felt so connected. I loved it so much. As someone who's like white and white passing, I felt like reading about them in high school was very representative of my high school, because I grew up somewhere in Canada that was very diverse. Like, I'm saying like most people were Arabic, Middle Eastern, you know, from immigrant families, right? And my parents are both immigrants, and I'm half Middle Eastern, and I just feel like we need more stories about teenagers, adults, writers that are making it from, you know, different backgrounds. And that's what I found really encouraging as well to read. And obviously I have no place to like complain or talk about it more. Like, of course I'm a child of immigrants, but I'm also like white passing, like I said. So for me, it's like I had my own difficulties, but not really to do with my skin color. Although I did have some issues with my skin color because I am like olive passing, so a lot of people, anyways, all this to say that like different people from different backgrounds, we need more stories like that. Alright, let's talk about It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. There's not going to be any spoilers in this one, but I do want to say that it's been falsely marketed as a romance, because for me it did not read as a romance, and I think that's part of the reason why people really are critical and some people hate this book. And I understand that, because besides one aspect of it, there was some romance or some true love and whatnot, but the main plot line is about being in an abusive relationship. Now, we can say all we want about Colleen Hoover and how in the past she's romanticized abusive relationships and whatnot. And this kind of reminds me about the quote by Lana Del Rey when she was saying that everyone else in the industry talks about sex and love and all the games, but when I'm talking about the nature of me being passive or in love or in the wrong relationship or in this type of, abusive relationship which has been glamorized, and I'm trying to show what it's like actually to be hurt and to be in love, and like not just focus on that aspect, right? It seems that I'm the one that everyone comes for versus, anyways, my point being is that because Colleen Hoover always gets so much flock and she has so much attention on her, I think that for once she probably did try to write something that was good and groundbreaking in this in the category of toxic relationship, but it just, because of the way it's marketed and because of the older adults reading it and thinking to themselves, oh my god, maybe a younger person is gonna think this is like pure romance or whatever and that we should forgive abusers. But I think she kind of made it clear to the end that that's not the case. And for me personally, I've seen abusive relationships. I've been in one. I've seen other people be in one in my family. I grew up in like a weird family dynamic. And I can confidently say that that's really the reality, where you love someone and you don't understand what's going on. And then you want to forgive them. You want to keep the family unit together and you don't, So for me personally, I think this was a very realistic portrayal and depiction, but because of the love and the lust aspect and everything else in this book, we might lose it, and people that have never been or witnessed or seen an abusive relationship, they think that abuse is 24/7 all the time. What actually ends up happening is that the abuser most of the time is not always abusive and does in some ways love the person but can't control themselves, or in certain regards most abusers are just lacking accountability, lacking responsibility, and even when they know they did something wrong, they think that they can still get away with it. And that is, not every abuser is the same, and not every abusive relationship consists of always abuse, And I think in that way she showed it really well, how you forgive and then the cycle continues until you take a stand against that cycle. And sometimes these cycles, as we've seen in this book with Lily and her mom and her father, Lily's father, how he was abusive towards her mom, and how Lily from the beginning is like, I never want to be in that situation. And anyways, it's just a lot to unpack, and I think it's because of the fact that Colleen Hoover has done a poor job in the past, and then on top of that, she has like this crazy fan base of younger adults, and then people that are growing up with Colleen Hoover are realizing like this is not right, how she writes her, like how she portrayed the relationship in the past have been problematic. And so they think that because some people have never been to abuse, they think that this is unrealistic and this is glamorizing, romanticizing, and promoting abusive relationships, which it's not, because clearly if you read the book to its end, you can. Anyways, I'm not gonna go through spoilers, but I think that it's not that, but I do think that the marketing of this book is horrible. I don't think that this book has been ever marketed correctly, and that's the unfortunate part with such a famous and popular book. I would never go around calling this strictly a romance book. And the funny thing is, when I googled a list of summer romance book, this was the one that came up, and that's why I read this for this vlog. So it's very terrifying to me that that's why people are getting lost in translation. But yeah, I did enjoy it. I did like it compared to other of Colleen Hoover's book that I read when I was younger, and I could tell back then that it was problematic. But I think this one, she did try to make an effort and try to depict from her own life experiences, like her mother's experiences, because her mom went to an abusive relationship. So yeah, I don't know what else to say, but I would love to hear other people's thoughts on this book. I think the criticisms are still valid though. Like, I do think that I can see how people would read this and be confused by it and believe that that's what it is. A, because they've never been to that, and B, because they've seen always great relationships or semi-great relationship, or C, because like the way that it's written and the way that it takes its time to get to a certain type of conclusion. So I do like see it, and I do think it's very valid criticism, but I also do see the other side as someone who's experienced those things. So
so I decided to help out the candidates, even though I'm prepared for my full staff. Now I smell like rocket. This is the third time I'm trying sparkling snow to no avail.
alright, I just finished It Starts With Us. I read it this morning. I read it in one sitting. Let's talk about it. So for this one, since it's a sequel, I will go into minor spoilers. So first, let me tell you what I think in general, and then we're gonna enter the spoiler section, and then you can just skip to the next book. So I'm going to say that like when you don't see this book anymore, I'll probably put a timestamp, then you can, you know, safely watch it again. Obviously like until I stop holding up this book. So first off, as a sequel, I do think that it was like necessary but not necessary, like as in like it could have ended at the first book, but it does help to see what happens after with what happened in the first book. I think the only reason why I feel somewhat connected or understanding of these characters in the second book is because we had the first book and we had the outlook of what happened in the past, and you know, like we had all those insights. So that's the only thing I'm gonna say. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it. I was happy that it wasn't as triggering as the first book for me. So for that, like I really do feel like it was like a breath of fresh air, although there are some harder moments still, and there are a lot of things that are being explored. And this is where I want to come to the spoiler side. So that's enough that I can give without like spoiling the entire two books. So now we're gonna get into spoilers, so you're warned. Skip ahead if you don't want to hear the spoilers, and I'm gonna keep on going. I really like the relationship between Atlas and Lily. First of all, I feel like it never feels forced, and it never feels like, okay, like as much as Lily helped Atlas when they were younger, and as much as Atlas is helping Lily now, I feel like they have like this relationship where they're not codependent really, and they're not like separate beings, but they're also like together, and they can rely on each other and they can support each other. So I feel like that's like the hallmark of a healthier relationship, because you know, like usually in these types of books and narratives, like there's this like savior complex, and like I'm saving you so you can love me more, or like, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of that going on page and in real life with people. And I just like that Atlas is just like a support. Like it's like he wants to help her, but he knows that like, I think like people that have never witnessed abusive relationship, broken families, like I feel like they can understand this book without really understanding like wait, people live in these type of conditions and worse, and it's not as clear cut as being like, okay, I'm gonna cut contact, or okay, I'm gonna do this. It's not clear cut when you're married. It's not clear cut when you have kids together. And I'm saying this as someone who is a child of a divorce, and I've been to like a lot of that type of trauma, and I feel like those traumas, if the adults are not mature enough, if things don't turn out well, they actually tend to persist. So looking at Lily and the initiatives she takes further in this novel is really helpful, because I think some of you might not understand that for a lot of parents, and I'm speaking from experience, not me as a parent, but as a child of parents, a lot of parents don't want to sever ties between the children and their parents. And we can see this even with Atlas and his, the introduction of his actual brother, and well, his half brother in this story, Josh, how he doesn't want Josh to have no ties to their mother, even though she's a horrible mother, even though she doesn't even deserve it. Atlas knows that, and Atlas knows that no matter what, he will be there for his brother, right? So it's that wanting to kind of help and give love to the child extended. Like, I don't know how to explain it. I as a child did not understand it. I'm still not understanding it, but like reading this kind of helps me to see what my own parents went through. And it's like, even when the parent is toxic, the other parent still wants that child to have their love, but they also want to protect that child. So when push comes to shove, or before it becomes, like a big problem, a bigger problem, they have to interfere, they have to lay boundaries, they have to have courts involved, lawyers involved, they have to have other people that they can trust, right? And now, I know there's a lot of people that hate that Alyssa and Marshall are still close to Ryle, and I think that's a valid criticism, but I also think that if Ryle was isolated further and not having Marshall and Alyssa in his life, I don't think that he would have even like agreed to anger management classes. Like, people don't really change, but sometimes it's good for them to have an encouragement, and like, at the end of the day, like, you need to limit that exposure. And I think it's harder when it's family. I think it's harder when there's multiple people involved, and I do think they are respectful enough with Lily to like, help her with those boundaries, and to like even be there for her, and even always take her side when it comes down to these things. So it's a very complex book. Actually, like, I like that there's a lot of nuance in this. The only thing that I really hate about It Ends With Us and It Starts With Us, it's the fact that it lacks that marketing where it's like, hey, this is an adult book. This is not for children. This is not for young adult. This is not just a sexy romance, steamy romance. I don't even find that this is like, should be marketed as a love story, as a sex story. I think this should be marketed as a family tragedy and generational trauma, because that's what it reads like more than that. And for me, it baffles me how people are just so hyper focused on the romantic aspects, which, yes, for sure, but at the same time, it's more about how hard it is to be with abusive parents and then abusive partners, and to be stuck in these situations and trying to get your way out. Because even when you're out, you're not really fully out, because when you have kids, children, when you're going through a divorce, it's not as easy as people think. You literally can be, like we've seen with Atlas, you literally can come into a lot of problems if you take someone else's child, even if you know that it's your brother, even if you know that they're safer with you. etc., right? I think actually in this book we got the best case outcome. You know, like I had a lot of anxiety reading it because I knew how things can turn, and I still think like Colleen Hoover wanted something positive out of it. She wanted to make some kind of like level ground, because there's no way with how Ryle is that Lily would have won anything, because like they said it a few times in the book, he's a neurosurgeon, he makes a lot of money, he doesn't have a bad record, and all those type of things, right? So I think that Colleen Hoover really wanted something positive out of this, and I actually like applaud her. And again, this is fiction, right? So we can't just, I mean, we could sit here and talk about it all day long, but I do think, from what I've read from Colleen Hoover when I was younger, her other books, absolutely I didn't like them. I mean, I liked them at the time because I was young and naive, but like reading It Ends With Us and It Starts With Us feels more mature, and It Starts With Us actually digs deeper into that by presenting Atlas's situation and exploring Atlas's trauma and childhood and his relationship with his mom. It's meant to be unfathomable how parents and partners and people that claim to love you doing horrible shit and not being able to take responsibility, because that's the reality. There are a lot of people, if you've had the pleasure and privilege to not witness that in your life, if you have the pleasure and privilege to not have been abused by a loved one, by a parent, by a partner, and I'm not just talking about like sexual and physical abuse, I'm talking about like even emotional abuse. Emotional abuse can take a big toll, like it can lead you to wanting to harm yourself and end your life. So I think that a lot of people picking up these two books are misled into thinking this is like a romance book, and I think, and it's because of the marketing. It's not people's fault, it's the marketing's fault. And I think they're also misled into thinking that Colleen Hoover is kind of trying to glamorize this toxic relationship. If anything, I think out of most books that I've read, this is the one that is trying not to glamorize it. It's kind of trying to show how it goes deeper than the surface that we can see. And again, it's still fiction. She still has to stick to her kind of light-hearted genre. She still has to come up with like these positive solutions that in real life are not that easy to come up with, but it is fiction, right? So in this world, she kind of gets to write her own past, I would say, because like as she said, it's part of it is based on her experiences as a child and her mother's experiences with her toxic relationship, right? So I don't know what else to say. I'm not saying this is great. I'm not saying this is amazing. I'm not saying that it doesn't have flaws. And honestly, I don't think these two books are my favorite books at all. Like, I think they're good books. I think they're marketed terribly. I think that they should be marketed to an older audience. And also because older audiences can be critical. And I actually want more books about topics like these that are not too much focused on the romance, right? And I do think that there is a romance. Atlas and Lily's romance is very much like something that is real and tangible. They know each other, they get to know each other even more, they trust each other, they feel safe with each other to like talk and explore their feelings and to, you know, take steps together. In that sense, like I was rooting for them since the first book. Like I could tell that she was making Atlas into this, if anything, one of her best kind of male leads that she's written in so far most of her books. But like I said, no one is perfect, and I think that we should stop calling this a romance. I wouldn't have picked this up if I knew that it was more than just a love story, that it was mostly about a toxic, abusive relationship and what ensues from that. And you know, like I think the love story is like the backhand stuff. I think it's the love that tries to heal what was taken away without it being like this is the only love that exists, right? Because at the end of the day, Atlas had to make his own decisions, and so did Lily, and they had to survive on their own, and they had to make the conscious decision to be loving people and to experience and show and build love in the way that they've never learned it before, and that they've had a glimpse of it very briefly when they were young adults. So for that, I really like it, and I really do root for Atlas and Lily, and I really do think that their relationship is one of the healthier ones that I've seen in a while in fiction romance books. So those were my thoughts. You could disagree, obviously. Like I feel like I could talk about this for a very long time. And I think the reason why is because of my own personal experiences. And I love hearing people that have never experienced these things come in with like a very like all or nothing mindset, because they really can't picture themselves. And that's the point. You can't picture it unless you're living it. You could picture it as much as you can, but you can't live it, right? You know, it's like I could picture myself being a different person, and like completely different person, but I also will have a disconnect because I'm not that person. I don't know. I'm just gonna stop talking about this now. But yeah, do I recommend it? Yes and no, depending on what you're looking for, depending on what you want to read or what you enjoy reading. I don't find that the first or the second book was enjoyable reading just because of me and my trauma and my upbringing. That's why. That's the only reason why. But I do think that it's an interesting read. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Too much to say, but I will stop there. So we want to talk about the last two books that I've read. Right, Mimi? No, he doesn't want to. I'm sorry. But I will. I will talk about them. I've read One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston, and I've read Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and I enjoyed both. I would say that I really like Book Lovers more so than Beach Read that I've read last year. And One Last Stop was disappointing in a way that like I thought I was gonna get more out of it. So let's start with this one, and then we're gonna end off with Book Lovers. Let's start with what I do like. So this story follows August, and she moves to New York, and she finds this place where she has basically 3 roommates, and 2 of the roommates are dating, and this is a very queer positive space, and all the characters basically are queer in this book. And it's a very like found family tale, and for that I really love it and I really enjoy it. And it kind of makes me like, you know, like as a queer person, you get sad when you read stories like this. Like it makes you happy, but it also makes you sad because you didn't grow up with friends like that and you didn't have that. I mean, personally for me, like even though that the main character is 23 and I'm 26, and it's not that big of a deal. I'm not in university anymore. Like I'm not like in that point in my life where I can just form friendship as easily. Although I am trying. I will at some point put myself more out there and find friends my age that I also, you know, are queer or not, but that are, you know, queer accepting. So for that, I really did enjoy it, and I really did feel like, you know, that sad happiness type of thing. And so the main character, she was always like alone and sad and kind of like distant and isolated because of the way she grew up. She grew up with her mom, and her mom has been obsessed with investigating the case of her missing brother, which is August's uncle, to the point of obsession and to the point of like putting a lot of pressure on August. So she finally leaves. She finally goes to school in New York, and she gets a job at Billy's Pancake. And even there's this aspect of family and community, and these aspects of family and community and getting back in touch and finding new people that are kind of like your family and bonding all together to help save people, or in this case also save a type of community. I don't want to give it out because I don't want to spoil. Is very prevalent, and for that I really do enjoy it. However, so the story follows August, and she meets this girl, subway girl called Jane, and it doesn't take long, honestly, for her to realize that Jane is not really alive and she's kind of stuck on the subway. And August wants to help Jane, and she wants to figure out what happened, so she gets her friends involved, her roommates involved in this whole tale, and it's really funny. It's really nice to see. But I will say there are some points that seemed like Jane and August's relationship was a bit forced, was a bit too convenient, and we do see it being battled out, but at the same time it feels like every discovery that was made was so convenient to help the case and so convenient to push the story along. And to be honest, this was what, almost 400 pages. I think we could have got away with 250, 300 pages. I'm not the only one that said that this dragged, but yeah, it did drag for me, unfortunately. I will definitely be reading Casey McQuiston's other story, Red, White, and Royal Blue, because the movie just came out as well, but the audiobook is like on loan for a few months now, so it sucks. I should have placed that loan before when I placed this loan, but anyways, it is what it is. If you do like female relationships, if you do like early 20s found family, I would still recommend picking this up. However, like I said, I really had big expectations for this one, so it didn't unfortunately meet my expectations. Okay, now let's go to book lovers. Can we please stop calling people rivals and enemies when they don't spend that much time being rivals and enemies, and when they don't actually hate each other? Because it's very misleading. I really want more angst, more like I hate you so much, you know? But yeah, but I did really enjoy this book. This was a great book. This book follows Nora Stevens, and she's an agent in New York, and she really built a career for herself. She has this one client, Dusty, who's one of her best-selling clients, and she's making sure all the time that Dusty gets all that she wants, all that she needs to keep on, you know, writing and creating the best books that she can. And so then comes in, what's his name again? Charlie. And Charlie is her rival. He's basically an editor that didn't like Dusty's story 2 years back, and so from that, Nora and Charlie like kind of kicked it off on the wrong foot. But then fast forward 2 years later, Dusty's book that is set in Sunshine Falls is a bestseller. There's a movie that was made out of it. There's a movie tie-in book editions, and yeah, so basically Nora is at the height of her career. Everything is going well, but now her younger sister Libby wants her to take this vacation in August to Sunshine Falls. So reluctantly, but because she loves her sister so much, they take this trip, and this trip is a chance for them to reconnect, because in the last few months Nora finds that she's not connecting to her sister, and her sister Libby is pregnant and she's having her third child, so she just wants to have that connection. The only thing that softens Nora's heart is her little sister. From there, we follow the story not only of Nora and her little sister, but also Charlie, because it turns out Charlie is also in Sunshine Falls. So yeah, all I'm gonna say is that I really enjoyed this. I actually tabbed a few passages. I really found the characters to be believable. I really found that they were more fleshed out. I really found that they had more flaws, they had more backstory, they had more connection, they had more time to talk and get to know each other. And so for that, I loved Book Lovers much more, and the banter was actually so good. I was like kicking my feet up, giggling and like squealing, and like I was like, where is my Charlie? Where is he at? Where is he at? Or where is my Nora at? You know, like, where are they? I want that kind of friendly banter, book lovers dynamic going on in my own life. So I actually did enjoy Book Lovers. I'm not gonna say it's my favorite romance ever, but it's a good one. It's one that I would recommend. Hello, it's me. I've been wondering if you watched the entire video, but I'm here to end it all for good. What kind of ending? To be determined. No, honestly, I hope you enjoyed this video. I don't really read that many romance anymore, but I was in a summer romance mood because my love life is lacking. So I was like, why not rekindle the romantic air in my life and see if like I can draw inspiration, especially since I was writing my French Riviera book. So yeah, as you guys know, I have vlogs on this channel, I have book recommendations, and if you want to see more videos like this, please let me know if you want it more like a reading vlog, or do you like to sit down and just talking about the books that I've read in a similar genre. Let me know. I'm open to doing both. I'm open to experimenting with this style of video making. And let me know if you read any of these books. Let me know your thoughts and opinions. If you spoil it, I guess write like a spoiler warning for other people that are reading the comments. And what are some of your favorite summer romance books? Like, what books have I missed on this list? Because I've missed a few. I was gonna read People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry, but I just couldn't do another Emily Henry book. I don't know if that's just me. I can't do like the same author back to back all the time. So I don't know. I figured I'd do a part 2 next year. Also, let me know what kind of thematic type of videos you want me to either recommend, film, read. I used to do more of these back then, but I feel like I've been all over the place, so I'm still working on different vlogs right now, and they will come out as I finish filming them, editing them, and reading some of the books for those vlogs. So a lot of celebrity book recs coming back soon on this channel. I'm just so busy with writing, reading, working, and running my second channel. So as always, everything is going to be linked down below. All the links are always down below, and I will also talk to you guys down below. I hope you had a great summer, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye!